Shalom and welcome to our Hebrew class. This is the beginning of our Hebrew class, and we are going to begin to understand just a little bit more about Hebrew. This is lesson 1, and let us begin by having a look at the differences that we find in Hebrew and what we can learn from beginning this journey. We call this the Hebrew quest. And these are points that distinguish Hebrew. Hebrew uses different scripts, as we must already know. Hebrew is read also from right to left. And 3, Hebrew is read from the supposed back of the book. And 4, sentence order is different. In English, we have subject, verb, and then direct object order. Example, Izzy, subject, ate, verb, the pickled herring, which is the object. In Hebrew, the verb comes first, followed by the subject, and then the direct object. An example, here we have, ate Izzy, the pickled herring. And the 5th point is that Hebrew also differs on its means of communication. It relies heavily on context, facial expression, on tone of voice, and physical action. And what we'll find is words that are spelled exactly the same, depending on whether they are verbs or nouns, can have completely different meanings. But as we go along, especially as we go through scripture, that'll become fairly apparent. So let us continue now. And also point 6 is that Hebrew is constructed of a 3-letter consonantal root word. And I've given you an example here. And what we see here, if we look here, 3 letters, and it could be seen as read katav, similar to if we substituted to write with the word write with WRT, without the vowels. We could then have example, the verb, to write, the noun writ, meaning a writ, and the adjective written. Knowing roots gives you up to 50% of the vocabulary of the Bible. And 7, unlike English, Hebrew words have masculine and feminine genders, like French and Spanish. And 8, Hebrew words have letters on the front or back. These are called prefixes and suffixes. So now let us look. This is called the Hebrew Nikodot table. What are Nikodot? They are what we call vowel points, meaning that Hebrew is not written with vowels, so they need to be inserted. It is actually the Masoretes, who are a group of Jewish scribe scholars who worked between the 7th and the 11th centuries CE. And the introduction of vowel points, or in Hebrew, Nikodot, is attributed to them. These are extremely helpful in the reading of the Hebrew script, and I've given you a chart which helps a lot. When we see a mark like we see here under the first letter here, calling, which is an aleph, that stroke or that stroke, or that stroke, it gives us an A sound, as in father. And when we see 2 dots or 3 dots, these 3, or with those 2, but also these 3 and these 2, we get more like an E sound, as in met. Of course, I am simplifying it, but just to make life easier, and as we go along, you'll understand why. When there's a dot underneath it, like that, we get an I sound, as in big, even though where we have this letter yod, behind it, it lengthens the sound. And then when we have a dot above the letter, like you see here, it's more an O sound, as in alone. So it's an O or an O sound. When we have a dot next to the letter, like next to the vav here, or a diagonal 3 dots under the letter, it's more an oo sound, as in moon. And also where we see the vertical dots here, those vertical dots, they either end or begin a syllable. And then we have the shin, therefore it has a sh sound. And then we have, with the dot on the opposite side, it becomes a sin or an S sound. So, we'll quickly have a look at this. This is like, they call them diphthongs, but basically they're a combination of letters. And it's just giving you some examples here where this is a long sound and it's I've, of, and this is an ui, this is a oi, and this is a I, and I. They sound very similar, but this is, we will do it as we go along. You will then discover exactly how to say them. And diphthongs are literally a combination of vowels acting as a unit and producing a unique sound. So now let us begin by looking at the letters. Now these are all the letters of the alphabet, and we will go through them so that we begin to have an understanding of the letters. But each time we do a class, I always go through all the letters that we're going to see in that verse. So let us begin. This is called an aleph. This is called a bet. This is called a vet. Same letter, but one has a dot in it to tell us it's a shorter sound, more like a B, and this has a V sound. Then we have a gimel. And what we'll notice is the first sound you hear of any letter is the sound it makes. So we've got a gimel, then we have a dalet, then we have a hey, we have a vav, a zayin, a chet, that's more guttural, chet. And it's normally represented by the ch, but that's not like in the English, which is, it's a ch. This is a ch. It's got that guttural sound. This is a tet, this is a yod, kaf, and this is a kaf at the end of a word, and it's called a kaf sofit. This is a lamed, this is a mem, and this is a mem at the end of a word, it's called a mem sofit. This is a nun, and this is a nun at the end of a word called a nun sofit. This is a samek, samek, and it's the S sound. Is an ayin, and we must make note that ayin is usually silent in Hebrew, just like the aleph is silent, but then it takes on the sound of the vowel. And then we have a pei, and then we have a fe-so-fit or pe-so-fit. The dot in it determines whether it's a pei or a fe. Then we have a zadeh, so it's like a TZ or TS sound. And then we have a zadeh sofit. Then we have a kuf, we have a resh, we have a shin because the dot is on that side. And then we have sin, so it's a sh sound or an S sound. And that's because the dot is on that side. Then we have a tav, the last letter. Now let me just recite them in one action. Aleph, bet, vet, gimel, dalet, hey, vav, zayin, chet, tet, yod, Kaf, kaf sofit, lamed, mem, mem sofit, nun, nun sofit, samek, ayin, pei, fe sofit, zade, zade sofit, kuf, resh, shin, sin, tav. Okay, now let us move a little bit further. And now I'm giving you some examples of reading Hebrew. This being a very common one that we use every time we do our liturgy. And it's read as As you notice, this is silent. So we go Shema. So when we have a letter with the two vertical dots, it can be It can be like an E sound following the letter. So it's Shema, Yis, Ra, El. As you can see, I've got it underneath here. So you can easily look at it and say Yis, Ra, El. Va, Ya, right? Ya, Ve or Way. We have a tendency to say Yahweh, but in modern terms, this has become a Ve. So it's Yahweh or Yahweh. Sounds very similar. Some will say it's Yahuwah, but we will just stick at the moment with Yahweh. And this is Elo. Elo, that's that. Hey, Nu. Hey, Nu. And this is Yah, again, Yahweh, Yahweh. Echad. This is a short E sound. It's Echad, meaning one. All right? So basically we're saying here, Yisrael, Yahweh is our Elohim. Yahweh is one. And I've just repeated here that there are these two letters, sh, which happens to be this one, as in shu, and the S as in sorry. This one is the S. So these are other notes to remember. The letter Aleph and Ayin, as I said before, have no sound, but the vowel determines their sound. And two, there are also a number of letters that change in appearance when they appear at the end of the word. The reason for that is in the ancient text, I guess paper was expensive and they would write the words very close together, so you didn't always know where a word finished. So they changed the end letter so that it was identifying the end of a word. And here we see the letter Kaf, which is written like that, appears at the end of a word as like that, called a Kaf Sofit. The letter Nun, as it appears there, and then it appears as a longer stroke called the Nun Sofit. The letter Mem appears as this, like a closed circle almost, and is called a Mem Sofit. And the letter Pei appears as this one and is called a Pei Sofit. And the letter Zade, which looks like that, appears like this and is called a Zade Sofit. Right. Now some additional notes. This is called a Bayit, being the short sound as in bit, so it's a B sound. Then we have no dot inside there, and it's called a Vayit. On the other hand, and is a longer sound as in Vic. Then we have Pei, is also a short sound like as in pick. And then we have a Fei, as in photo. And we've got a note down here which says the general rule is that a dot denotes a short sound and no dot dot a longer sound. So just as we saw there, b or v. So it's a short or a long sound. Now we're just looking at an example, just to help you see the structure of a word. It begins with what's called a vav, and a vav means and. And then we have the root word, which is a. That's a sound. So both of these are a sounds. So it's a hav, and then ta, a havta. And it means, and you shall love. It literally says, and you love, but we normally translate, and you shall love. And I've given arrows so that you can see where, and I've shown that that's like the end of a syllable, the beginning of a syllable, so where we see the double dots, and this is where it finishes, and that helps us reading. We know that we have to read this one separate. V, a, hav, ta. So it breaks the word up. And then we have et, which is not usually translated, and it tends to be a grammar pointer, a marker they call it. And then we have Yahweh. If we take this as a w rather than a v, because you could say Yahweh. Some people put a dot there and call it Yahuwah, and then they put a vowel marking underneath there. But we'll just stick with Yahweh at the moment. And then we have Elohecha. Elohecha. And of course that means your mighty one. So literally it says, and you shall love Yahweh, your mighty one. Now, we're still completing this part. Now this is a bet, right? So it's b, kal, because that's an a sound, le, vav, cha. It means, b means in, kal means all, levav means heart, and cha is your. So down here I've put it here, with, because the bet can mean in or with, so normally it's translated as with, all, and that's your, or your, and levav is heart. And then we have uv, right? Now uv is here, it means and, in or and with. Uv, kal, again means all. Nuf, because this is a fey, because it doesn't have a dot in it. Nuf, and this is a sh, cha. Right, so we get nuf, sh, cha. And of course, this part here is this part here, which is uv, kal, which is and withal. And this is your. And the fesh is soul. So putting it all together, and with all your soul. I'm just giving you an example, but it'll come a lot easier when we have transliteration and we go through the verses. Because why I like going through the verses is that we know the verses, so it's a little bit easier then to follow what's happening, and it'll come. And then I've included also uv, kal. Now we already know that means and withal. And then we have m'odecha, m'odecha. And again, I've broken it down. Kal is all. This is and in, and in. And this is your. Cha, what we discovered is that the personal pronoun is always at the end. So if it's you, your, them, they, it's always at the end. and moed, or mode, is strength. So it's mode, right? Mode, cha. Right. So don't get too confused. This is just an introduction. So let's just have a look. What is the beauty of Hebrew? The Tanakh is a great literary legacy that the Hebrews, Christians, and even Muslims treasure. However, Hebrew, as is written in the Tanakh, can be read easily. However, if you would try to read English in the 1500s, it would be extremely difficult. Interestingly, a Hebrew schoolchild could pick up a Dead Sea Scroll written 2,000 years ago and easily read it. Surely that in itself is a testament to the divine finger on the Hebrew language. There are also two main pronunciations of Hebrew, the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi. Ashkenazi was used by Eastern Yehudi and named after the Hebrew name for Germany. The Sephardi pronunciation was used in Spain, North Africa, and the Middle East and named after the Hebrew term for Spain. Sephardi Hebrew is closer to the original, is more accurate, and because it is the most commonly used by Jewish people today. That's why we tend to use it in our lessons, right? Hebrew was revived as a modern language in the 1800s, primarily by a man named Eliezer ben Yehuda. And that does not mean that Hebrew didn't exist, but it was limited to synagogues and limited to the common people. And we will gradually get to read a bit about Eliezer ben Yehuda too. So I hope that this introduction to it is not too difficult, that you can go back to the actual part of the letters and we can just get used to going through the letters, because then each time we do any more, we will actually repeat those letters and they'll become quite familiar. So we hope that this is helpful in introducing you to the Hebrew, and we just want to wish you a Shavua Tov, which literally means a good 7. So have a good week or a good 7. Thank you.